Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail, and today I have a really special guest, Brittany Hamann. She is an elopement photographer and business coach. She's based out of Michigan, but she travels all over the place. She goes to Hawaii all the time for elopements. She's gone to Zion, Bryce, Glacier, and she was also one of the speakers at ElopementCon, which just happened a couple weeks ago. And I loved her presentation. It was how to become a magnet for your dream clients. And that's kind of what precipitated this whole podcast episode. So welcome to the podcast, Brittany.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about your ElopementCon presentation because in the middle of that presentation, it was how to become a magnet for your dream clients. And a lot of it was kind of mindset work. And you literally just called it out in the middle of that presentation where like, if you don't believe that you need to work on your mindset, then you're wrong.
Yes.
Mindset is really important. And I feel like I have wanted to say that so many times to people who are like, oh, this is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Like mindset isn't a thing. It's just what all you people talk about all the time to like scam people or whatever. And it's not really a thing, but it is a freaking thing. It's important, right?
It is. Yes, it is. I used to think it was a load of shit too. So I get it when people feel like that. But just like I was wrong, they're also wrong.
Yes, they are wrong. And I loved how you just called them out on it. So let's talk about kind of your journey with your mindset, because before you were an elopement photographer, you achieved a lot. I mean, you achieved all your goals. So why don't you tell us kind of what you did before you transitioned into elopement photography?
Yeah. So before I became an elopement photographer, I worked in nonprofit for my whole career. I worked in a lot of different positions and I ended up as a vice president at a nonprofit. I was also working on my master's degree and I was doing all these things. I was achieving all of these things. I got more paid time off. I was making more money, but I still wasn't happy. I still didn't feel the way I thought I would feel when I accomplished all of those things. And so working on my mindset was really what made me feel differently. I always thought that I would achieve the external things and then I would feel a certain way, but it actually turns out that it's the opposite. You work on yourself internally and you change the way that you feel, the way that you show up, and then everything around you changes.
Exactly. That's so cool. Tell us the story about quitting your VP job. Because I mean, that's huge. You're vice president of a nonprofit and then you freaking quit that? Like, are you crazy, right? Like, that's probably what your family said. So tell us that story.
100%. That is absolutely the reaction. Yes. So I just felt like I was missing out on something in life. Like I was spending most of my time working in an office. I was spending time away from my husband, away from our pets. And I just felt like I was working my whole life away for somebody else. And I was working on my photography business on the side, but I did not think I was going to be full time, maybe ever, or maybe not for several years. And then actually one of my dogs passed away and it kind of put things in perspective for me. And I just realized life is so short and I just want to be able to spend time with who I love. And I want to be able to travel and like experience life and live life. And I quit really soon after that. Actually, I hired Megan and so Megan was my business coach for a while. And after I stopped working with you, I was able to quit my day job a few months after that. Yeah, I gave my notice and everyone thought I was a little bit crazy. I thought I was a little bit crazy, but sometimes you have to kind of like shock your system a little bit.
Yeah. And like life has been good since then, right? Because your husband quit his job. You're at home with your fur babies. How many do you have now?
So we have 2 dogs, 3 cats, and a hamster. And then we feed all of the neighborhood stray cats and also raccoons and possums. So they're kind of babies by extension.
If you want to live vicariously through Brittany and her like raccoons and possums and stuff, you should follow her on Instagram because she posts stories and I love it. So, but yeah, I mean, you guys, you go to Hawaii all the time. You're living your life. Yeah. You're at home with your fur babies and you're traveling. Do you have slow mornings or are you a morning person?
I like to have slow mornings in the summer where I can like sit outside in the
Hmm.
sun and relax and read a book. But I tend to be a morning person. I get really productive in the mornings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get like my whole list done. But yeah, life is completely different now. It's incredible. Like I get to spend all my time with Jake, which was when we were both working in offices, we always would joke about it. We thought it was like not something that can actually happen. We would text each other and we would say things like, "Oh, I just wish I could spend all my time with you." And now we actually get to do that. We get to spend all our time together. We get to travel a lot, but we're also going to be home with our pets more. You know, even with the traveling, we're still home with them more than when we were both working day jobs in an
Yeah,
office.
totally. I love that for you guys. So, what were some of the like really important mindset shifts that happened to allow you to do this? And even more recently, because when did you quit? Was it like a couple of years ago now?
Yeah, this fall, I think is 3 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And like, even in those 3 years, I've seen you change and you like hated showing your face on Instagram. And now you're
Hmm.
like on there. I don't know. There's just like a whole new energy or vibe about you. So, like, I want to talk about what mindset shifts you went through in the beginning and then also more recently, too, because we could all learn from that.
Yeah. So I feel like a big thing that I had to kind of realize is that we just all have these stories that we're telling ourselves that aren't necessarily true. So I told myself the story that like nobody would want to elope in Michigan because it's not a national park. It's not a super popular elopement location, that nobody want to elope here. I couldn't build a market of people who want to elope here. And I had to change that story to that Michigan is a beautiful place. There's tons of places to elope. There's more than enough couples who want to elope here. And when I changed that story, the belief that I had in it, the belief that I had that people would want to elope here, that changed how I marketed myself, how I showed up, how I talked about my business. It changed everything. So that was, I would say, one of the first ones was just changing that story around Michigan elopements and around my business, and that realizing that I could create a market of people who want what I have to offer in Michigan.
Yeah. And you book like crazy Michigan elopements. I mean, it's amazing. And
I
Michigan,
do.
You're like, yes, thank you. And Michigan, like, I didn't know Michigan was so cool. So many people tell themselves stories where like people don't want to elope where I live. Like, this isn't Colorado, or even people in Colorado would be like, I can't book elopements here because the market's too saturated. And literally none of that is true. It's all made up stories we tell ourselves. So I love that you brought that up because I used to tell myself stories about how I can't buy a house because of my student loans and all that kind of stuff. And the important thing I think to realize is you have to change that belief first. You have to change that story first. Like you changed that story in your head and then you started booking stuff. It wasn't like, oh, I'm booking things. So now I'm convinced that Michigan's a cool place, right? Like it's the belief, then the actions, then the result, not like some other way around.
Yes, 100%. I think that people think that they're going to work really hard and they're going to get this result, and then the way that they feel is going to change. And it really is not. It is the complete opposite. You change the way that you feel, and then everything around you changes. And it took me a really long time to get there. I was always very analytical, and I thought that all of this mindset stuff, all this woo stuff was just like a load of shit. I didn't think any of it was actually true. I just didn't think it was important. I thought as long as I was doing the work, it really didn't matter. And I would get the results and I would feel the way that I wanted to feel. And it just simply wasn't true.
Yeah. So, what are some of the other stories that you've changed for yourself?
So I talked about this in my Olympic presentation. I told myself the story that I was insecure for my whole life. It kept me from showing up on social media. It kept me from feeling confident on Zoom calls with couples. It kept me from just showing up in general. I just wanted to hide. I wanted to stay small. I didn't want to be seen. And I decided that it just wasn't a fun story to tell anymore. It
Hmm.
was controlling my life. It wasn't a fun story. And I think that when we have these stories in our lives that aren't fun, that we don't like, we need to realize we have the power to change them. We can tell a different story at any time, and our path is not set in stone. We can change it at any time. So I decided to just start telling myself the story that I was confident in myself, in my appearance, in what I had to offer as a person and as a business owner. And it changed the way that I showed up. And it starts off with being a little bit of playing pretend, where I just kind of had to ask myself, how would a confident person act in this situation? And then showing up like that. And then over time, I actually became a confident person. So you kind of have to be a little bit delusional and play pretend a little bit. And then
Hmm.
over time, it just becomes natural.
I just got like goosebumps thinking about that because this isn't even like I'm going to affirm myself that I'm like a 6-figure photographer or something. It's literally just like I'm going to be a confident person. And like that's where this glow up has come from with you. I swear, like you are showing up on social media totally different. You just look happier. You look like you're glowing. Like you guys can't see her right now, but I can. And it's definitely like this energy glow up that you have had, which I'm loving. And I think that that's again what people miss is like you have to choose who you want to become and then play that role, embody that, and then you become that person. You don't become that person any other way than that. You literally have to play act and be a little delusional and all that kind of stuff. And it's so true. And then finally you can step into truly being that person. And that's why like faking it till you make it is actually kind of a good way of doing things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I kind of think of it as like playing a character. Like we're all playing these characters all the time that are like a mixture of beliefs that we have about ourselves, the way that we see the world, programming we have from, things that we learned as a child, things from trauma. Like we all have these characters that we're kind of playing all the time anyway. So we can just change that at any time. We can decide that there's something about this character we're playing that we don't like anymore, and we can show up as someone different. There's no rules. Life's not that serious. We can change who we are at any time. It's just a choice.
Yeah, that's so true. And like, yeah, your brain can be rewired. It takes time because really like our brain is so hardwired for language that the words that we tell ourselves, it's true. If you are constantly being like, I'm insecure, I'm shy, I grew up painfully shy. When people hear that, I'm like, yeah, like painfully, like would not say a single word throughout an entire school week in class, at least, maybe a little with my friends, but even painfully shy with my friends. And I still remember in, I think, 8th grade, there was one day my teacher had to tell me to be quiet because I was talking with a friend. And she was like, oh my God, I'm writing this on the calendar. The day I had to tell Megan McPhail to be quiet because she never speaks ever, So I tell people that, or that I'm like a crazy introvert and they don't believe me. But you can become whoever you're meant to be or want to be, but you do have to kind of play act a little bit before you become that person and stick with it too, because it can be easy to like go off track while you're trying to kind of like manifest these things. But let's talk about manifestation, because what does manifestation mean to you? Because it's definitely a buzzword. Manifestation and kind of overcoming limiting beliefs in conjunction with strategies, that's how you really become successful. It's not like you can just manifest your dream life without any strategy.
Yes, correct. You can't sit on the couch and manifest your dream life, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could just literally just think about stuff and it happens. But tell me like what your opinions and what your thoughts are about manifestation.
Yeah, so my views of manifestation and kind of how I learned about manifestation is that you need these 3 big things to manifest what you want. So you need to work through your blocks. So whether that is subconscious beliefs that you have, money mindset stuff, if you have like some shadow work, some inner child work, things like that, you need to work through. So working through those blocks is one part. Having expanders is another. So people that you look at that have what you want to manifest, what you're calling in, whether that's the whole thing or part of it. Megan, you're one of my expanders. Yes, you're wonderful. So having that is great too, because you need to be able to show your mind that it's possible. Like your mind is not going to believe it's possible unless it can see it. It doesn't need to be the whole thing you're manifesting, but parts of it. And then the other thing is aligned action. So taking action that aligns with what you are manifesting, what you're calling in. So if you want to manifest 6-figure income, you have to take action that aligns with what is going to get you that 6-figure income. So you have to take the actual steps and do the work, but having that belief in yourself is going to fuel you through that. And it's going to get you way better results than if you're doing it and you don't believe that it's going to work. Because if you think that it's going to fail, it will fail.
Yes, I love this. And it really applies to entrepreneurship more than a lot of other things. And like W-2 employees, they can't just expand their income to infinity the way entrepreneurs can. But entrepreneurs freaking self-sabotage themselves all the time. They procrastinate, they make up excuses and all this stuff. And like, that's no shame to anybody. We have all been there, but like, that's why these beliefs are so important. That's why manifestation as a principle is really important, because you can't take the actions necessary without believing that you're going to have success and results from them. Or even if you take the actions necessary and it doesn't turn out the way you want, like in the back of your head, that's okay. This is just going to be, another opportunity to learn and grow. And I'm just not there yet or something. So it's really important to have these mindset shifts and kind of to get rid of some of your limiting beliefs about like, oh, the economy is bad and I'll never be able to afford a house and all that crap. You got to get rid of that stuff because otherwise your brain doesn't let you take the actions. You procrastinate and self-sabotage and do all this crap to yourself. And you basically create this reality that is in alignment with the negative thoughts in your head. So
we get to create our own realities. And I think that people don't think that. I think that a lot of people go through life thinking that what happens is just things that are happening to them and they have no control over it. But we get to create our own realities. We can decide how we react to things. We can decide how we move forward in life. It's just a choice. It's like anything else. We can decide how we think, how we feel. We can decide how we move through life and how our life happens. We get to choose that.
Totally. And like my choice lately is to think that money is imaginary. I don't know if you heard my podcast recently,
Yes,
but I'm like,
I did.
I just don't believe it's real anymore.
Yeah, it's pretend.
Yeah. It's just something I play around with, And I trade it for things, but it's just pixels on a screen, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can make up our stuff and you're probably like, oh, Megan, Brittany, you guys are kind of crazy. Or you're like, oh yeah, these girls totally know what's up. And like when I was a vet, man, I had the most negative outlook on everything. I really did feel like I was just at the mercy of the economy, of the government, of, my salary, of my boss. And I really kind of didn't have control over anything. It wasn't until I quit and became an entrepreneur that now I'm like, I have control over everything. And I have bad days, but where I slip back into being like, the world sucks. I want to burn my business down. But most days I'm like, oh no, I can accomplish anything. And even as I'm progressing, like I still have to work through blocks to reach additional levels, like I'm still working through stuff. So it's never like something you just achieve, right? It's like a constant practice.
Yes. Yeah. It's not something that you do once and then it's done. It is a practice. It's a process and it takes time. Every once in a while, I still have old subconscious beliefs come up and like I will look at myself in the mirror and my default reaction now is to say nice things to myself in the mirror. But it used to be for 30 years of my life that I said really terrible things to myself in the mirror. And so it's every once in a while, I'll have a bad day where I'll have some like negative thought come up about myself. And it's just about noticing it and then reframing it. And it gets easier and easier the more you go. It becomes more second nature.
So what are some things people could work on at home, like some manifestations they could work on, or even just some like limiting beliefs that they could work on getting rid of? What are some of the big ones you would recommend?
So I would say any kind of story that you're telling yourself that is holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be anything. That can be like we talked about, the economy is bad, that it's hard to stand out, anything like that. Something that is keeping you stuck. I would say another big thing that keeps people stuck is just being so attached to what other people think about them.
Ooh, yeah.
I think that is a huge thing that once you overcome that, you're going to move so much farther, not just in your business, but in your life too, because we waste so much energy thinking about what other people think about us when we never are actually going to know what someone thinks about us. We just have assumptions of what they think about us. And it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what someone else thinks of you. It matters what you think of you. So I feel like that's a big block that a lot of people have. And being able to work through that is going to help you be more confident as a person and more confident in your business and what you have to offer, more confident showing up on social media when you don't really care what anyone thinks about you and what you're putting out there. You're just putting it out there because you think that it is going to be helpful to people or it's good for your business. You're not putting it out there because you're trying to people please.
Yeah, that is huge. That does hold a lot of people back. What are my colleagues going to think? What's my family? What's my best friend going to think? What's my husband going to think? All that kind of stuff. And realizing, like you can't control what other people think, and like living in fear of it is definitely not going to help you move forward in your business and life. I think also, like, just as we're talking about this stuff, I think a lot of people have dreams for their life that for whatever reason they think are outlandish or they're not worthy of that. And I think working through that and being like, no, you can have this thing that you want. The fact that you want it means it's yours, and if you truly believe that, then you're going to go for it. Right. And I think that's like I mean, Albert Einstein even talks about that stuff, how like, I don't even know about quantum physics really, but I know that like there's
I
some,
do.
tell me if I'm saying anything wrong, but it's basically like everything in time exists kind of at the same time, right? So like
Yeah.
literally if you want something, it's because you already have it.
Yeah, so I said this in my ElopementCon presentation, and it's very woo, but if you can imagine a life for yourself, it means it exists somewhere in the quantum field of possibilities. So if you can imagine a life for yourself, it doesn't matter if it seems far-fetched to other people, or even if it seems far-fetched to you right now. If you can imagine it, it means you can have it. It exists
Chills
somewhere.
again. Ooh, yes, but like how empowering is that? Because we all have different dreams. Some people want to cure cancer. Some people just want to take really pretty photos. There's a reason why we all are literally pulled to these different things in our lives. And so many people sit there every day being like, I want this thing, but I can't have it because of blah, blah, blah. And like their logical brain kind of talks them out of it when they feel it in their chest that this is meant for them. Listen to that voice or that feeling or that pull. Listen to that and shut up your logical brain because it ruins all the fun. And then like tell yourself over and over again, if I can think it, I can have it, essentially. If I am thinking it, if I'm feeling a pull towards it, I should do it and I can have it. And it's not outlandish. It's not crazy. It's what's meant for you. And like that thought process alone can really change some lives.
Yes. I think that realizing that you get to choose, you get to decide, and nothing is holding you back but you is incredibly powerful for people to realize. And it wasn't until that I realized I was holding myself back that I was able to overcome these things and then move forward in my business and in my life. We have to step out of the victimhood mindset and step into the driver's seat of our own lives. I think that a lot of times we have all these victimhood stories about things that can't work out for us. Things are hard. This isn't ever going to happen for me. But those, again, are just stories, and they're only true if we allow them to be. I think we all spend so much time in victimhood. I know I used to.
Me too.
And it wasn't until I stepped out of that everything in my life started to come together.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think another way to rephrase that too, because I hate sometimes when people are like, stop acting like a victim. Because sometimes people say it like kind of derogatorily or something like that.
Yeah.
So even though I 100% agree with what you just said, and I totally used to be there and felt victimized by the world and society and my student loans and all that kind of stuff. But it's also just about being an active participant and driver, just like you said, in your life, instead of passive, instead of just accepting whatever's coming to you and being like, well, this is how it is. You can actively drive the car.
Yes. You are in control of your own life.
And just like stepping into that power is really cool. And like once you start challenging these thoughts and you kind of come out the other side, it gets a little addictive, you know?
Yeah. You can manifest anything.
Yeah. It's like, what
when you
else
realize
can I do?
that?
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to be like, well, I don't want to be a billionaire, but I'm not going to like be a multi-millionaire fostering all these dogs and raising chickens in my backyard. Like, these are the things that I want. Like, that's not going to happen without understanding that it does take time and it does take momentum and strategy and all that kind of stuff and lessons learned and overcoming blocks. There's going to be more blocks that come up in the future that I have to get over. And as you level up, sometimes those blocks become even bigger. You're like, wow, I thought I worked through this 5 years ago. And here it is, even bigger and badder than it was before. But it's so worth it and it's empowering. And it just makes everything better to know that you're in control of stuff. So yeah, I've loved this conversation. So what piece of advice would you give to the people right now who think we're crazy?
There's probably a lot of them.
Yeah.
I would say to try it, to start working on your mindset, because the worst that's going to happen is that you're going to work on it and you're not going to see changes. But I promise you, if you work on improving your mindset and you do the internal work, then you are going to see external shifts. It takes a little bit of time, but you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And if you continue to do the work and you're doing all of these things, but you're not getting the results that you want, then what you're probably missing is the mindset part of it.
Yes, 100%. There's some block going on in there. Yeah. So anybody listening who thinks we're crazy, just give it a shot. You know, find a block, find some story that you're telling yourself that is keeping you small, either in business or life. We talked about money. We talked about confidence. Like, just pick something in your life that seems to be holding you back and start telling yourself a different story and do that over and over and over again and work and move and act as if you're embodying that new story, and you will see changes and it'll be awesome.
Start showing up as who you want to be.
Yeah.
And yes, it requires you to be a little bit delusional in the meantime, but it eventually will just become who you are.
Yeah. And it'll be fun. So thank you so much, Brittany, for this awesome podcast episode. Where can people find you on like social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Brittany Hamann EDU or at Brittany Hamann Photography.
Love it. Go check her out. And yeah, I'm just so glad we had this conversation. I think it's really fun to talk about this stuff, especially coming from a science background where I thought all this was bullshit and you thought it was bullshit. Like, It's life-changing. So give it a shot and then tell us how it worked. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.